welcome back. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is about building a Slack application. So you might have used Slack in your workplaces, and you might have seen applications like Google Calendar application, which notifies you every time there is a meeting. It notifies you 10 minutes earlier, or whatever time you schedule it to, or other applications. Maybe you have used Slack alongside Jira in order to create tickets. How does all of that work, and how you can create a basic application using the Slack SDK? We are going to take a look into all of those things in the video today, right? So for this purpose, we are going to use one of my ideas. It's a very simple application which I am calling Knowledge Corner. And in this, we are going to integrate our Slack application with a backend database, and we are going to call a few APIs and understand how the Slack SDK works in general. So it's if you see Knowledge Corner, it's somewhere on my it's on my Slack app that I am using. So if you go to slack.com, you can sign in at slack.com. You can create your own workspace there, and once you create the workspace on Slack, then you will be able to build these applications, and you will be able to add the applications to your workspace. So I have created this account at slack.com. This is my personal account. So I have used my own personal email in order to create this Slack account. You can do the same. And then once you create the account, you can click on apps here. And if you want to create, if you want to build an application, you can from here. You can click on add applications here, and you can go to app directory. And in the app directory, you will be able to build the new application. So you can click on create an app, and you will be able to create this application. So I have created a similar kind of application on Slack, which is Knowledge Corner. And in this application, so you can see that there are few there is one there is the application homepage where you can put in some details, and there are a few commands that we are going to take a look at. So let's take a look at the brief agenda for this for today's session. We are going to take a brief overview of what Knowledge Corner is, what is the usability of this application, what is the application architecture, how does the code look like, and what are some of the assets that you can also utilize while you are building your own Slack applications. So Knowledge Corner is basically a list of web links that you wish to check yourself, or you would like your teams to take a look at. So this can be within your organization, this can be within your team members, can be within your say a small project where some of your team members are collaborating, or it can be within your larger organization, your larger business as well. So the benefit is that you can share the things that you are reading yourself. So you're mostly reading through web links, whether it is Jira tickets that you are reading, or internal product details, or maybe some documents that you have read, maybe some motivational motivational lessons, or any videos that you have been watching, and you want to share those things with some of your team members, with your colleagues. This is a way to do that, right? So it will go all of that will go in a single repository from where other team members can look at it, and they can they can search over that data. So the vision is that we can gamify it further, and there could be contributor leaderboards, there could be voting on resources, and we could appoint data stewards in different teams who will contribute these important articles or important product documents that other team members will benefit from reading or taking a look at, right? So this is a little bit about Knowledge Corner. It's basically an application that allows you to send, if you think about it from bookmarks perspective, you have bookmarks in your browser and you want to have similar kind of repository, but the one which is shared across your team members. So that's what Knowledge Corner is about. And then once you share your articles, you can also take a look at the articles that have come in from your team members, or articles that are related to a specific term. So for example, I want to look for all the articles that are related to database keyword, right? Or I want to look for all the articles that my brother has contributed into this, right? So I want to take a look at any team members article. So I can send a command and I can get those articles. So the interface is Slack. At the end, this is going into a database. All of that information is stored in a database and we are requesting that information from the database. But all the interface to this application is via Slack. So this is a brief overview about Knowledge Corner. Usability, if you think about it, is more on the cultural side of it. So if you think about an organization, you have lots of people who are reading documents, lots of people who are writing documents. There may be product managers who have written details about a certain product, and it is always helpful if there is a way that we can share that knowledge across all the team members, and there is relevant information that they should take a look at. Or think about the executives who are reading books on a regular basis, or they are reading new articles on a regular basis, and they can share their important articles, or the ones that they think are important for their teams to review. So say every Wednesday afternoon, I want to get the articles that one of my CXOs has read this week, and I want to get the list of those articles. So since this will be a single repository, you can easily query for those articles and you can take a look at what they are reading in this week. So there is the cultural aspect of this application. And in this tutorial today, we are going to touch only a few parts of this. Most of the application is still in the vision phase, but some of the pieces, for example, reading, submitting the articles yourself, or reading the articles related to a certain keyword, or reading the articles for a certain team member, those things are implemented. So let's take a look at how the architecture looks like for this application. So you have, on the left hand side, you have Slack, your Slack client, which will have the app installed in it. And whenever you send the command from the Slack app, it goes to a Node.js application, which is using Bolt SDK. Now, at the moment, I am hosting this Node.js application on my local host, but you could use something online. You could you could use something on the cloud. For example, one of the services that Slack recommends is using Glitch. So Glitch allows you to host the web applications, and in this case you have a Node.js backend application. Glitch allows you to host a Node.js backend application without provisioning servers there. So more or less in the serverless mode. Now you need a backend which will be listening to these commands that you are sending from your Slack. So from Slack, you will be sending a command. Let's actually take a look at that command. For example, I go to this pool talks section here, and I want to send Slack, let's say, a reading list, and I want to get the reading list of my brother. So I can tag him here and send this command. So now when this command goes, it goes to the backend application which is listening to this command. So that backend application we have created in Node.js, right? So you can host that backend application on Glitch, or you could host that backend application on your local host as well. Now, how do we expose that application from localhost? We will talk about that a bit. Or you could also use, say, a VM in somewhere on cloud. You could use your own server somewhere where you will install this Node.js SDK, or you could also use say Java SDK or Python SDK that Slack provides. So Slack SDKs Slack SDKs are called Bolt SDK. So this is the family of SDKs that Slack has. There is a Bolt SDK for JavaScript, there is Bolt SDK for Python, and there is Bolt SDK for Java. In today's tutorial, we are going to take a look at the Bolt SDK for JavaScript. Now, let's go back to the architecture. We have on the left hand side, we have Slack app, from where the command goes to the Node.js application, right? This Node.js application is using the Bolt SDK, and it sends the commands over to our MongoDB database. So we are hosting the database on MongoDB Atlas, and the data goes from Slack to MongoDB, and from there we can use this data for a variety of pieces. We are able to get the data back whenever we are calling for the data. For example, I just queried for the data that my brother has submitted. I wanted to get the articles that he is reading or has shared. So I want to get those. I send a command. That command goes to the Node.js app, and Node.js app sends that command to the backend database, which is stored in MongoDB Atlas. So the data comes back to Node.js app, and it sends it over to Slack. There is also another way we can visualize that data. I'm using Atlas charts for that. So there is a Atlas charts is a visualization tool that is available on MongoDB Atlas. So you can configure Atlas charts to create these beautiful visualizations on top of the data. And I'm also allowing text searches on top of this data. For example, you want to look for all the articles which are related to say database, or which are related to Java. So what you will do here is you will send a reading list search, and let's say Java. So when you send this command, it will get you the articles which are related to Java, right? So that's a bit about the architecture, and let's now dig deeper into the demo, and we will cover these details there. So how does it look like? So let's do here. Now we have created this application. The first piece is how do we create an application. So if you go to when you are able to send when you are able to get into Slack, you log into Slack, and then you want to create an application. So you can go here on add apps, and then you can go to app directory here, right? So from app directory, you can click on build, and build will give you an option to create an app. So you can click on create an app, and here you can specify the app that you want to create. Now, if you want, whether you want to create this app from scratch or you want to use an app manifest file, we will do it from scratch. So you can click on from scratch, and you can specify the app name, right? So in this case, let's say my app name is Knowledge Corner Demo, and you want to pick a workspace where you want to develop this app. Now my workspace name is Poolside, because I was developing this workspace when I was sitting besides a pool. This can be any name workspace, maybe in your organization. This will most likely be the organization name that you are connected to. For example, your company would have a Slack workspace that you could use here. So you can choose the workspace here and click on create app. So when you click on create app, it creates the application. Now you have created a new application. This is a blank application. It does not do anything yet. So how can we add features and functionalities to this application? You can click on this option here, and you will see these different tutorials which will allow you to configure the different pieces in this application, which we are going to do in this tutorial as well. And then when you want to install that application, you can go to this option to install the application to your workspace. From the app home page, you will see that there is a button which asks you to review the scopes that you want to add. Now, in my application, I have given certain scopes to my application. So if we go to app home here, and we can take a look at the scope tab, which is on OAuth permission. So when we went to app home, and if you click on review scopes to add, it will send you to OAuth and permissions. So in the OAuth and permissions page, here you see all the different bot token scopes that I have given to my bot, right? So it has, say, it can send messages, so it has write permission, right? It can read certain workspaces, right? So it needs these kinds of permissions in order to read the message and then act on those events, right? So we have given these scopes here. Now, another important thing that you want to take a look at is here. So when you create this scope here, you will also, so let's take a look and let's give it some kind of scope, and then after that you install it to the workspace. Once you install it to the workspace, you will get this OAuth token here. Now, this OAuth token is important because you are going to use this OAuth token in your code. There are two pieces in your code which are required from the security perspective. One is this bot user OAuth token, and another is on the app home, which was giving you, not on the app home, actually in the basic information tab here. So the other piece is this signing secret. So these are two variables that you are going to configure in your code. In fact, if we go to the code repository now, take a look at that. So here in this, in my code repo, inside the .env file, I have put in these different secrets, right? So out of that, one is the signing secret, which you get on the application here. So let's take a look at that again. This is the signing secret that you will require. And then you will also require the auth token for this. So so this is the new application. If we click on install to workspace, it will give us that token. In this, we already have that token. So OAuth and permissions. Here you have this bot user token. So these two tokens are important because you will require those when you are working with this Slack application. These two tokens will be required. Now, let's take a look further. So another thing that you will need from here, or you want to take a look at, that is the event subscriptions tab. So here you want to subscribe for certain events. Now, if you want to subscribe for events, you will enable this events tab here. If we go to a blank application in the event subscriptions, you click on, and then it will ask you to give a request URL, because whenever you subscribe to these events, there should be a backend application which is watching for those events, right? So you want to give the endpoint of that application which is watching these events. Now, in our case, we have this backend application that we were talking about in the slides, this Node.js app, right? This is the application which we are going to give here. Let's take a look at the value that I have configured in my application, and you are seeing this ngrok free.app, right? Now, how do you do this and what it means? Ngrok is a tool that allows you to have a connection between, this requires a public endpoint, an endpoint which should be accessible over the internet. If you have some application running on your local host, that application is accessible only from that local host. That application cannot be accessible over the internet, right? But ngrok allows you to create some sort of a tunnel that basically forwards your traffic from ngrok. Ngrok gives a public endpoint, and that endpoint forwards that traffic into your local application. So you can go to ngrok here. Let's take a look at ngrok.com. So you can go to ngrok.com and you can click on login, and once you log in on ngrok, then you can follow these instructions in order to run ngrok on a certain on a certain port, right? So once you do this, so then you will be able to run an ngrok for your application. Now in my case, I am running my application here. Let's take a look at the application that we have. Where is the application? It's the create event. No, this is my application. Yeah, so this is the application that I have, and this application is currently running on my local host here. So I can run it again using nodemon, and you are seeing this application is running on my local host. What I have done is I have used ngrok in order to forward all the traffic that is coming from this. I'm using ngrok to create a free application that basically acts as a proxy to my local application. So Slack connects to ngrok and it finds a publicly accessible endpoint, and that ngrok link then forwards the traffic into my local development environment. Benefit is that any changes that you make in the local environment, any code changes that you make in the local environment, you don't have to deploy anything anywhere, right? It is running on your local environment, and all the traffic that your Slack needs, that is routed into your local environment. So I found this very helpful. There are some details to using ngrok on Slack documentation as well, and I will send that. I'll have that in the YouTube video. Now, so this allows you to this allows you to run your application on localhost without hosting it anywhere. You are still able to fill that value in Slack. So you have we have put that value here, and it should have the endpoint as that app and then /Slack/events, right? Now this piece is very important, and the other thing is on the / commands. So on the / commands, if you want to create a new command on Slack, so you want to say do something when a certain command is run. So you can go to / commands and create these commands. So for example, one of the commands that we used was reading list. It's a command. So we can create that command here. So if we take a look at the command that I have already created here, it is reading list and reading list search. If we take a look at reading list here, so there is command reading list. This is the request URL and the short description for that command. Now, whenever you are creating a command, if we click on create command here, you will require the request URL here as well. So if you click on this, you can utilize the same URL because we have the app listening on the same URL for commands also. So you can use this URL and then put in /commands for that, /command for that. And then another important thing here, let's take a look at all the other pieces. Here we have enabled events. So event subscriptions, we talked about this, and then yeah, so that's pretty much it that you need to configure from the Slack from this UI on Slack. Now the part is where you need to write the code. You need to write your own Node.js application. So let's take a look at my application here. The code repository will be available to you with the link which is under the video, and you can take a look at the README file, it talks about Knowledge Corner, the different actions that it allows. So we can share an article from the home page of the application. So if we go to the home page of the application here, we can put that article. For example, we want to, let's say there is docs.mongodb.com and we want to share the documentation for a certain thing. Let's say we want to share the documentation for Realm with our team. So we copy this and the link here, and we put in the summary. I will say this is a Realm documentation. Okay, and I submit it from here. Now when the submission happens in the application, this is available here. The event has been generated, right? And we can take a look at the data if this was submitted. So if we go to this activity collection here, so we have, let's take a look, and we want to find this. So our summary will have a realm somewhere there. So let's take a look. Realm. So this is the Realm documentation, that we sent, the command that we sent from the app home, that data was received on the database. And this happens via so there's a call that is happening from the backend application to the database. Let's take a look at the code and we will get a walkthrough of the code on how this is done. So in terms of the repo structure, we have two important files. One is index.js, another is db.js, right? These are the two files that are two JavaScript files which are important in this repository. And the third piece is the .env file, which I just showed to you. And this would have all the different keys or secrets that you will require in order to connect to different services. So these two are for Slack, and this one is for connecting to Atlas. Now, for MongoDB database, we are not using MongoDB databases SDKs or driver SDKs for connecting to MongoDB database. We are sending the data over the data API. So MongoDB has a data API as well, which we are utilizing in this case to insert the data, to read the data from the database. And we are also utilizing a webhook, an HTTPS webhook in order to search the data. I will walk through those pieces here. So let's take a look at the code. On index.js file, this is where most of our code is sitting. So on the index.js file, let's increase the font size a bit. So the first piece that you need here is you need to add the Slack Bolt SDK, right? So here I am adding the Slack Bolt SDK into my application, right? So you will put in the require Slack Bolt SDK and you get the application from it. Now we are going to use these two secrets that we had put in the env file, the Slack signing secret and the Slack bot token. These two will be needed in order to configure this application to receive the events or to write the events back to Slack. So any communication that it is able to do with Slack, that is with the help of these secrets. And here then the first event that we are looking at is the app home opened event. This app home opened is an event which happens when you open the home page of the application. So when you go to the application and this home page opens, then the app, this home event is called, right? The app home event, the app home opened is called, and you need a piece of code which is listening to this event. So when this event happens, what do you want to be served to the user? So when this event happens, we want to show these three pieces to the user: a link, a summary, and the submit button, right? Now we have put all of that in this function. So there is app.event, and three pieces are there: the event, the client, and we are logging something. So here you will use client.views.publish method in order to publish the message back to the app home. So what we are using here is these block pieces. So it tells it to render this piece, what would you like your colleagues to read, and then it tells it to render the next piece is a plain input which takes the link from us, then another input which takes the summary, and then there is an action button which is a submit button, right? And it has an action ID. So this is what we want to send back to the user who has clicked on the app homepage. So when you click on app homepage, the event app home opened is triggered, and whatever code has been written in the app home opened event, that code will be sent back to the that thing will be rendered on the app home. Now let's talk a bit about the code that we have written here. So there is this block kit builder in Slack that allows you to build these blocks. So if you want to say add a markdown, so let's actually clear all the blocks, and let's say you want to add a markdown block. So you click on this markdown, it will show these blocks here. You can make some changes on this, customize based on what you want, and then you can copy this payload and copy that and paste that into your function, right? And you can create something like this. Now using this block kit builder, we were able to create this simple UI on the app home. The next thing that we are doing here is we are listening to the function, we are listening to the action when the button is pressed. So when we fill in this link and we fill in this summary, when we click on the submit button, we want to take the details which are in link and summary, and we want to submit that into the database. How do we do that? Let's take a look at this. And here, now this ACK event is something that Slack expects first, and you have to put in this. So whenever you are returning, so the ACK should be returned first in the to the app, to your Slack app, right? So I don't know the exact purpose of this ACK, but this is something that all your Slack functions would be expecting. So whenever you are listening to an event, when that event happens, you want to send an ACK to the client that this has happened, and this needs to happen first. And there is a timeout limit, I think around 3 seconds of timeout limit within which this should happen. So all your code should go after this ACK is done. So here we are then just logging this for our when we were developing this, that this button was pressed, and then we are capturing the state for these different input elements. So we are capturing the state for the link input, and we are capturing the state for the summary. And then once that state is captured, we are building the document. So the thing that we want to send. So we need link, summary, and username and created at these things, right? So we are building that here: link, the data that is there in the link, the summary, that the data that is there in the summary, and then the created at, we are building a new ISO date value from here whenever the link was submitted. Once we do that, we are sending a write call to the database with this data. Now how does this go? Let's take a look at this, where this lies, and open it on the other page. So this is inside the db.js file. Here I am using the data API in order to send the data from this application into MongoDB. So I am calling this is the write to DB function that I have written. So it expects data, and then it adds some config details to that data. So there is a config which specifies the method that we want to use for the API. There's a post method, the URL endpoint, different headers that need to be configured. So once it does that, it adds the data that has been provided by the user, and then it uses Axios in order to call the API with the data. So once that happens, then the data is logged into MongoDB database, and we send the acknowledgement back here. So once this write to DB call is finished, then it sends the success message that the submission was successful. It sends that message back to the application, right? So this is the code for submitting the message. Now, once we have submitted these messages, different users have submitted their messages. If you want to get the reading list of a certain user, so let's take a look at the reading list command. Now this is app.command. This uses app.command. Here we are using app.event. Here we were using app.action. So these are different pieces in Slack, right? You have events, you have actions, and you have commands as well. So here we are listening to a command. So reading list is a command. When that happens, we have put in this code. What we are doing is we are taking a look at the database Slack activity collection, and within that collection we are getting the data from that collection, right? And then we have created a block here which once you send that command, you need something to be rendered on the screen. So when that happens, what we do is we take a look at the data from the database for that user. So if you send the reading list with no user, then it gets the reading list for your user with which the command has been sent, or it gets the data for a user that you specify, right? So I was looking for my brother's reading list, then I sent /reading list @ his name, right? So it looks for those details, and then it sends a query to the database here. So where is the query? Yeah, find from DB, right? That find from DB again is in the db.js. So here we have written the code for find from DB. It also does this over the REST API. So we are finding the data from here, and we are returning that data. Once that data is returned, we are iterating over that data set, and we are sending the result back. Now, for the sake of this demo, we have limited it to first 20 results. These can be random 20 results that will be returned from the database, but in the real world, you would want to specify some kind of order on this and limit the number of elements. Here we are using block sections, and there is a limit on the number of blocks that can be sent back from Slack. So this limit was 50. So I have kept it at 20 deliberately. Earlier I had like hundreds of links that I had submitted into the database. When I looked for that, my app was crashing, and there was a generic Axios error that I was seeing. And later on I found that this is the limit that I was hitting. You can send only up to 50 blocks at a time, and you can send, I think, up to 3000 characters in a single message. So I'm limiting this for now for the demo purpose to 20 until I figure out a better way to handle this piece. So after that, there is another command that we have created, which is the reading list search command. So this takes a keyword and searches based on that keyword. Now, if you go to Atlas Data API, the MongoDB Atlas Data API, it does not have a direct way to search across the data. You can do a find, but you cannot use the Atlas search indexes, which are more powerful for text searches. So if you want to do the text search, then you can go and create the search index on Atlas. So you can create a text search index here. Let's take a look at this index. So I have created this text search index on the data that we have inside the database. Now, once you create this text search index, then you want to use what is called a $search aggregation command for Atlas, right? In order to do that, I went to app services and I created a new application here. In order to do this over the REST API. So let's click here and go to the HTTPS endpoint that I have created. So this search reading list is the endpoint that I have created. So this search reading list endpoint has a function which is able to send the data back to, which is sending the data back to us. This function is search reading list. So let's go to functions and take a look at the code for this search reading list function. So in the functions, you will see that this is basically sending a small aggregation. It is sending a $search aggregation back to the database, and it is taking the search string that is coming from our endpoint. So we are calling that endpoint here, and for that we are using another function which is search from DB. So in the reading list search, we are calling this search from DB function here. Search from DB. Where are we calling that? Search DB. Yeah. So we are calling this search DB here, and inside the reading list search. So it takes the text that we have sent from the command. It takes that text and then it sends that back to the database. Now in search DB, again, we have used a REST endpoint, and we have used Axios to call that endpoint in order to get the data. And once we receive the data, we then render the blocks on the Slack interface based on the data that we have received. Now we have beautified this data a bit, right? So you can build your applications in the same way. So in summary, you need a backend application which can be using a JavaScript SDK, or it can be using a Python or a Java SDK. In this case, we have used a Node.js SDK, the Bolt Node.js SDK. So once you create a backend application, you can host that backend application either on your own desktop, in which case you will need to use something like ngrok in order to create a connection between, in order to expose a publicly accessible endpoint, or you can host it on services like Glitch, or you can host it on your VM, which is publicly accessible. Once you have that, you put that inside the Slack app with //events link, and that allows events to be sent back to your application, and you want to subscribe for those events. So in this case, we have subscribed for events like home open event, right? And then we have also subscribed for things like commands, and we have also we also took a look at the action button. Whenever the button is pressed, we are taking an action based on that button. And finally, we were able to write this data back to the database. We were able to query that data from the database, and we were also able to run some text searches on the database. Once all of this is done, now this is more on the user side. User is able to see these reading lists, user is able to query these reading lists. But on the admin side, you want to keep a track of the contributions that have happened over time, and you want to create some sort of a leaderboard, or you want to gamify this a bit. So you would need some sort of analytics with you. So for that kind of analytics, what I have done is, with the data that I have inside this collection here, in the activity collection, we have the data that has been collected, which is the link, summary, and the person who has sent that data. So we are using this Atlas charts in order to create the visualization on top of the data that we have collected. So here we can go to charts, and then inside this is the Slack reading list that we have created. Now you can create these kinds of dashboards as well. In this case, we have also created the dashboard for different uh, this is basically I've divided the data into smaller tokens. Like the summaries have been divided into tokens and how many times we have found that token, and based on that we are rendering a word cloud here, right? So you can do all of this very quickly with Atlas charts, and then you have an admin dashboard as well. So you can access all these resources. You can go to ngrok in order to create this. You can follow the link. You can host on glitch. You can follow the link for that. You can take a look at the repository. I will have that publicly available on GitHub. You will not be able to use my environment variables because I will be removing those tokens and environment variables for security purposes. But you can create your own tokens and access keys, and you can put that on in the env file, and then you can utilize that file. And yeah, I hope this tutorial gives you some idea on how you can create your Slack applications. You basically need a web server which may be running. In this case, we were using Node.js SDK, and you can just get started with that. And with that, you can send commands to third-party providers or databases or to other services like we did in this tutorial. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, or any other or any questions that you have regarding the use of Slack SDK. Let me know, and I'll be happy to take that. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.